Welcome to Elixir Health and Wellbeing Inspired event. And today we're going to be talking about brain health. One of the big hot topics at the moment is mental health through isolation and how that is affecting people. And what we want to talk about today is how you need to look after your brain in order to look after your mental health. It sounds obvious, but there are things that a lot of us do that we really do miss out on in terms of looking after our brains to help with our mental health. So we've brought along from Viridian, we've brought Phil Beard, who I'm going to let him introduce himself. So over to you, Phil.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Neil. And I'm really looking forward to going through all this, and really hot topic at the moment. And I know everybody's going through different kind of cycles, kind of on a day-to-day situation. You'll have good days and bad days. But in terms of myself, I'm the technical educator at Viridian Nutrition, and we help with kind of the education side of things, going out and doing a lot of research and just looking into in-depth knowledge or in-depth research around certain conditions. But me personally, I joined Viridian around 3 years ago, and I've learned a lot in terms of the supplements industry. And before that, I was working in the public health system, working on the NHS program for the diabetes program, or the pre-diabetes program. And so that was a real eye-opener to me in terms of putting in what really mattered in terms of nutrition. So before that, I'd just done my master's in nutritional science, and I came into the public health perspective, and then suddenly I was opened my eyes up to what actually matters to each individual person, and that science really does go out the window slightly when you're trying to deal with individual people who don't know how to cook, or they don't know what certain foods are, or they are just basically just trying to get through day-to-day situations and just try and control their kind of the potential to develop diabetes, basically. So there was one gentleman that always comes to mind. He basically, his wife had just previously died, and he'd never cooked a day in his life. And all I had to do was try to find a way of giving him the advice as to how to read labels, how to cook foods in the microwave. Now, it wasn't my ideal kind of way of doing it, but for him, that was how you had to do it. So it's just kind of understanding that everybody is different, and you just got to kind of find that little way of helping somebody. And I feel like it did help him. He managed to kind of control his his blood glucose levels, and he didn't go on to diabetes. So that was brilliant for my personal view, but it was just how he had to do it. And but now I've come into the supplements industry. I've kind of put into how you can use supplements, for instance, into a public health perspective, but still remember that food is at its core. And that's fundamentally what we all need to be doing, eating more mindfully, eating everything that we can to actually fill our bodies up with what it needs. So, yeah.
So people will be asking now, this is great, you know, what benefit is it? It's great that it's going to help your physical health, and I can see the correlation between nutrition and diabetes, but you know, how does this affect my mental health? So I think it'd be good if you and I just talk about, you know, some of our own experiences through isolation and how that's affected our mental health, if you can. So I mean, personally, my daughter, she's 16, she's going through her exams at the moment, and she is really struggling at school. And you know, she attends all of the lessons online. She's at an age where she is about to take her exams, and that strain that is upon her to not only do her exams, which is also a stressful situation, but then is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? Back and forth. Are you going to have your exams? Are you not going to have your exams? Am I even turning up to school the next day? As you know, it really weighs heavy on her. And so we've been looking at ways in which we can help her deal with that stress, manage that moving forward, and thus deal with her mental health issues. So this has become quite a big topic in our household, and from the conversations I've had with people in store, I know that it's a big conversation for them to have as well. And I understand that you've got a bit of a story as well, Phil. So you moved recently, right?
Yeah, so back before the last lockdown, basically I was moving back up north from our office is based in the Midlands. So I was moving back up north to work from home a little bit more. And so I'll be out on the road and going out and doing a few more educational events. But then lockdown happened and I was forced into working from home all the time. So I had to stay at my parents' house for a good long time before I just purchased my own house recently. So at least that got across the line. But yeah, nobody is not being affected by this. And that's the thing, like everyone has been impacted by kind of just being restricted to what you do. And mentally it is draining not knowing that kind of, when is it going to be over? When are you going to see somebody? I've not seen anybody in my office since last March, and that's huge. I'm just getting used to seeing people on a screen now, which is weird. You don't get that same sort of personability, and you don't get that kind of in-depth talk that you would have if you were with somebody. So it completely affects me in terms of how I go through day to day. Sometimes you feel motivated, sometimes you don't, but I know that the best way that I've managed to get through that. So I was training for a marathon at the beginning of the year. They all got cancelled, and because I was already in that routine, I carried it on, and that's helped me throughout. I've carried on cycling, carried on running, carried on I had a little garden gym and managed to get into my own little routine there, but it affects everyone. So I think in terms of what I had to go through, there's probably nothing really, but my little sister, she was working on the COVID ward, and I was hearing all these stories about what was happening, and you feel helpless. You feel like when you're just at home working, you're kind of not contributing as much as you can to something else. So they're saving lives. She was holding hands of people who were kind of dying, and it wasn't a nice thing to be hearing, and you just did feel helpless, and you didn't know how to talk about that. So yeah, it was really draining sometimes, but all I could do was try and help her and talk through things, and know that she was going through a lot of things as well. So mentally,
that's really tough for her, isn't it?
Hugely, yeah. So I think going forward, nurses and doctors, they all need to be kind of given a little bit more time, and we need to be going through how can we
improve breathe, really.
mental side. And yeah, it is crazy. Like they are seeing things that you can't even imagine sometimes. So for my little sister, who is 5 years younger than me, to be going through that sort of thing is kind of horrible, really, knowing that. But she's resilient. She became resilient to it, but you just don't know what the consequences are of that could potentially be. So everybody is affected in a different way. So it's just trying to find that different angle of how we can help people.
So that resilience, that's the key. That's what we're trying to talk about today. So let's dive into that a bit. How do you create that level of resilience? You know, you can't just say to somebody, you know, toughen up a bit, what's up with you? You know, it just doesn't work. You've got to have something there. So first of all, I think it's probably best to start with, why is the brain so complex? What's going on there? Yeah.
Well, your brain never switches off. Even when you're sleeping, your brain never switches off. So for all the energy you consume, your brain uses 20% of that energy just to function and just to kind of do day-to-day tasks. So if you think about what it does, it's doing everything kind of subconsciously. So you've got your central nervous system, which is basically controlling how your body moves. So if you pick something up that's hot, for instance, you're sending out these sensory and motor neurons, which are all kind of concentrated in the brain. And so the motor neurons tend to send out the signal to pick up the cut, basically. And then your sensory neurons will just suddenly tell you, oh, that's really, really hot. Okay, I best put that down. That all happens in a split second. But your brain is continually needing kind of fuel. Your brain is continually needing blood flow and oxygen just to function properly. So if we've got kind of issues in terms of what we eat, and the kind of seeing how much nutrients can play a role in kind of the overall function of the brain, and just clearing out waste from our brain as well. So when I talk about waste in the brain, this is basically molecular waste, such as kind of plaques or fatty plaques and kind of free radicals build up within there, and we all need something to help cycle this out and just draw it out of the body. So we need that constant supply of energy, constant supply of blood flow as well, just to help clear out everything. So there's so much going on in our brains, and it's just knowing how do we improve it and how do we allow it to function more or optimally, should I say.
And our hormones that control our emotions and the way that we feel and those intangible things are going through that brain that is full of clag and clog.
Oh, absolutely. So if you think about all your feel-good hormones or serotonin, for instance, this is the one that helps regulate your mood, your feelings, even makes you feel happy, for instance. So these are all things that are going on. So if we think about so there's been a lot of talk about gut-brain barrier or gut-brain axis, should I say. So many nutrients are actually produced in our gut and then need to go to the brain as well. So it's all part of the same cycle. So serotonin is produced within our gut. So an amino acid called tryptophan is basically the precursor to serotonin. And if you eat lots of protein and getting good sources of protein, should I say, this is the best way of actually releasing serotonin. So tuna is a really good source of tryptophan, which is then going to help produce serotonin as well. So even eating oats, for instance, it has a really high level of tryptophan as well. So even nuts and seeds, even cheese has good levels of tryptophan. So these are all things. So a variety of foods are the best thing to actually produce some of these as well. So serotonin is just one, but then you've got dopamine as well, and then you've got GABA, which is another kind of inhibitory and neuroexcitatory transmitter, which is basically helps calm you down and kind of makes you feel more relaxed. Whereas dopamine is something that is more revolved around your memory, your motivation, and also some regulation of body movement. So all of these are all going on throughout your body, and they're controlling how we actually feel, how we respond to information. So even our prefrontal cortex, which is right at the front of the brain, how we receive information, there's been research that's actually shown that we dampen down our prefrontal cortex and how we receive information. So we are then it can cause anxiety, it can cause kind of stress or undue stress from just simple.
I mean, by dampen down, how are we dampening down that frontal cortex?
So kind of through our emotions and how we kind of are seeing things. So just because of societal pressure, we are kind of changing how our prefrontal cortex views things and how it receives information. So in terms of previously, our prefrontal cortex was hardened. It could register emotions. It could take in information and kind of regulate that information. But in terms of what we're seeing now is that there's kind of alterations in that, and that's actually impacting our ability to actually receive that information. It can cause like stress, or it can cause anxiety from just simple little things that maybe wouldn't have done that kind of previously. So it's just about regulating the brain function and controlling our brain through dietary approaches, through keeping active, to kind of even doing kind of brain tasks as well. All of these things can improve our ability to receive information and regulate our emotions, really.
So your frontal cortex, just for my knowledge really, is that the one where you are receiving a potential danger threat and your frontal cortex goes, right, by fight, flight, freeze, or deal with this? Yeah.
Basically, yeah. So you've got so many parts of the brain, at the front, so you have like 5 different compartments that are kind of controlling these emotions. Some are in charge of memory, some are in charge of kind of controlling your movements, some are some are even just for going to the toilet, for instance. But prefrontal cortex is that emotional kind of receiving and how we actually talk to people, how we respond to somebody's conversation. That's all the thing that prefrontal cortex is involved in. And just, again, having a friendly conversation, or making you feel angry, or it's quite involved in how we actually do it's involved in everything we do in terms of when we talk, when we speak, or when we kind of listen to people as well. So it's huge, really.
When we spend a lot of time on social media and such, especially now we're in lockdown, so we have that interaction on our phones or on our computer screens, that information overload effectively is going to have a direct impact on that, without a shadow of a doubt.
Absolutely. So if you think about how many emotions, or if you see something on a social media page, maybe it's somebody who is looking really fit and they're doing stuff that you maybe think you should be doing, or maybe what's what you should be looking like, for instance, that changes your emotions, and that changes how you feel about something. It suddenly makes you feel slightly more and higher anxiety, or makes you feel low in mood because you feel like you're not achieving things. It's these sort of things, you're going through constant things, and there's a constant stimulation, especially through social media. You're constantly being reminded, and you're constantly being told, or you're putting yourself into you're putting yourself into something that you think, molding your way into a way that you see yourself in a different light. But the thing is, you got to focus on yourself. You got to really kind of consider, what do you want? Not what anybody else wants. It's what do you want? And that's the best way of controlling our own emotions.
Okay, good. So in terms of that and dealing with our own emotions and the amount of energy that's consumed through our brains, we've got this clag in our brains that's caused through not eating the right foods fundamentally. So
Yeah.
the real question is, we've talked about sort of how not eating the right food impacts our brains. So what can we do about that?
So the thing is, it's not to look at individualized nutrients all the time. You'll always be told that this certain nutrient or this food will be the best thing for you. It's going to do this, this, and this. And we really get focused on individual food. And then we kind of pigeonhole ourselves into just limiting what we eat. And it's about expanding how much we eat. We want to eat as much colorful food as we can, a much variety of food as we can. And it's about kind of not limiting anything. It's about kind of understanding what you're eating, what kind of foods are good for you, what kind of foods that you can have that are going to help contribute to kind of improving your well-being, your physical state, your mental state. So that's the key thing. So there's been plenty of evidence when we've looked at Mediterranean diet, for instance. So there's always going to be more and more research just showing you how good that sort of thing is. But it's more just thinking about what's within that. How can we do that? It doesn't necessarily always have to be a Mediterranean way. It can be a way of just improving our vegetation in our diet, or improving the good fats in our diets. So it doesn't have to be, I have to have olive oil, I have to have this, I have to have the red wine. It can be anything. You can kind of mix it up around that, as long as things aren't processed and we are kind of cooking things from scratch. So that's even a huge thing. If we can start just cooking things from scratch, that helps stimulate our mind. That helps kind of stimulate our gut into actually absorbing food slightly better. So when we're cooking, there's known as a cephalic phase. And this produces all the gastric enzymes to be released. It regulates our pH. It actually relaxes us as well. So we can actually digest food effectively. So if we're eating out on the go, if we're eating processed foods, we are missing an area of the body's ability to actually slow down and process everything we need. So even if we are eating these, I know there's a lot of advertisements out there at the moment on kind of shakes and having just all-in-one drink meals. That's not going to do anything for your kind of well-being. It's not going to do anything for your gut and your harmonizing of your body and producing all these metabolites from the gut. So much happens before we actually eat that actually help us to actually absorb all our food. So if we're just eating on the go, not cooking, not doing anything for our kind of ourselves food-wise, we aren't going to be absorbing all those nutrients and being able to utilize the foods that can produce these neurotransmitters, produce these good feel-good factors as well. So it's just understanding that what we can do is just focus in on just simple and expand on our food varieties, really.
That's a really good point. I mean, I've got into cooking quite a lot quite recently. I've started putting a few recipes out on our YouTube channel as well. And it really is that the sensory element of starting to smell the food, having a look at the food and seeing the various different colors that are going in, and then monitoring that and knowing that that's going to be healthy food for me and my family really does help. And that's before you've even eaten it. So I understand that from a brain health point of view. I can understand why cooking your own food is an absolute prerequisite to helping your brain move forward. So
yeah, and I think during lockdown, I know during the first lockdown, more people were starting to cook, and they were.
Oh, we sold more flour and yeast than you can possibly imagine. People trying to make their own bread.
It's brilliant, though, isn't it? It's just showing, like, knowing what's going in your food. So if you can go and make some bread or something like that, there's normally 4 ingredients at max in bread. Whereas if you go to a supermarket, getting all the sliced bread, you're going to be the minimum is going to be 10. So all you need is flour, water, salt, basically, for bread. And that's basically all you need. So if you're cooking that, you're making that, then that's the best thing you can do, knowing what's going in things. And I think that's the key thing. Mentally, it's great because you feel good about making a piece of bread. I know it might take a few times to kind of master it, and everyone's tried the sourdough side of things, but we're all trying.
Yeah, no, definitely works. So we talked about that. We talked about the Mediterranean diet, and this also links, by looking after your brain. We're also touching into weight management, right?
Yeah. So if you think about controlling your weight and controlling your ability to kind of utilize energy, that's the key thing, really. So we have a lot of chronic health conditions in the UK, and a lot of this is down to kind of poor metabolic health, really. So when I'm talking about metabolic health, it's your ability to utilize nutrients, your ability to process food into its active form. So going into the cells to be then broken down into everything that it needs to be. So broken down into neurotransmitters, broken down into kind of ATP, which is basically the body's energy sources. So if we can enhance our metabolic weight, our metabolic health, so you can control your overall weight. So try and reduce the kind of, just looking after the weight, really. So if we can kind of come away from being overweight or obese, then we are already improving our metabolic health and getting down to a body size that is more suitable for us. And these can all then improve that metabolic health and enhance the ability for our body to use those nutrients and go to the brain and make us feel good. So it's all part and parcel of kind of going through kind of eating and mindful eating and trying to just understand, by eating certain foods, they are going to inhibit our ability to actually process or function on a day-to-day basis in terms of brain health.
Let's talk about those inhibitors quickly. So, we've talked about what would be good to eat, but we haven't talked about what are the real blockers out there. And we don't want to be preachy. We don't want to tell people what they can and what they can't do. However, we need to understand. I'll give you for instance. So one that I'm really aware of is alcohol. People think that by drinking alcohol, it improves our mental state, but it really doesn't. And there's science behind that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you drink alcohol, ethanol can do so much damage to our body if we overconsume it on a day-to-day and we come to rely on it. So if you break alcohol down to its core form and its chemical forms, ethanol is not great for the body. The liver has to then process it. The liver has to try and get rid of it. So we can tolerate a certain amount, and certain amounts of alcohol there's nothing wrong with drinking alcohol in some states, like, and we can utilize that, and our body can use that as a kind of a neurotransmitter. We can relax our body as well, which is why we get that feel-good factor around drinking alcohol. So it kind of mimics other neurotransmitters as well. So, but when you talk about the Mediterranean diet, they recommend to drink red wine and have those side of things. So alcohol in small amounts isn't bad. We just need to know how much we should be consuming. If we're having it on a day-to-day situation and we're having 1, 2, 3 glasses and just thinking, okay, because it's locked down, I'm just going to carry on drinking, and just, it's a habit at the end of the day. It's not going to give you the best kind of standing point going forward. So it shows that if you have alcohol, your sleep efficiency goes down by about 50%. So this, when I'm talking about sleep efficiency, you're talking about REM, which is like your basically deep sleep. So you actually lose out on deep sleep when you do overconsume alcohol, when you have more than kind of 2 kind of glasses of any alcoholic drinks, basically. So you don't feel as restful as you should do if you were to not be having alcohol before going to bed, basically. So it's just knowing when and what to be drinking and how much you should be drinking, really.
So if you're consistently drinking, then that restorative, stage is not going to happen during the night, and so consequently you wake up in negative deficit from the start of the day, and so on and so forth continuously. Yeah.
So sleep is one of the most important things that we can do for mental health. It is the thing that's going to kind of restart our body, really. As soon as we've had that deep restorative sleep, that is our body's shutting down. That's our body just completely resetting and ready to go for the next day. If we don't have that, we are still got all these kind of metabolites going on in our body that haven't quite settled down because we haven't had that restorative sleep. And like, the leading into kind of mental well-being, sleep is one of the biggest things. If we don't have a good night's sleep, we're going to feel more ratty. We're going to feel our kind of cortisol is going to be raised. We're going to be highly stressed. And these are all things that affect our mental well-being and our mental state. And it's just not going to start us off. So I'm not saying don't drink at all. We're talking about kind of when it becomes a nightly thing, and it just becomes that habit where we have a nightcap, for instance. And that's kind of where we're trying to focus in on.
Yeah. So if you are anxious and you are struggling out there with anxiety through this lockdown, and you're thinking about having a drink of alcohol to calm that, it's really not helping. So it may help in that little instance, but for the rest of the time it really won't. And I think it's an important message to get across.
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay, so are there any nutrients we can be eating then to improve our mental health?
Yeah, so we'll base it on kind of that Mediterranean diet, that whole food diet, that colourful diet. But fats, our brain is made up of basically 70% fat. That's kind of fundamental. We need fat just to kind of maintain our brain health. So the fats help to kind of cushion our brain. It makes up a lot of the neurons. So if anybody's ever heard of grey or white matter, these are basically made up of fats, and they protect all our neurons and kind of axons as well. So they're kind of, they've all got these myelated axons, which are basically means they've just been covered with fat, and they've got that protective mechanism. So by maintaining good sources of fats, we can help protect our brain. But when we look at in depth into the different types of fats, so you've got fish oil, for instance, you've got DHA. Now you find DHA is probably found in the most abundance within the brain.
That's a part of omega-3, right?
Yes, sorry, that's part of, so omega-3 fatty acids, specifically from fish, you will find a natural EPA and DHA within there. And they've been shown to be great for like cognitive health and kind of maintaining function of the brain. So, and just even protecting the brain as well. So you'll find a lot of DHA specifically embedded into cells and neurons within the brain, and they protect the brain really via the cell membrane. So they form this phospholipid bilayer, which is basically kind of protecting everything inside the cell. So when we have a good structure of these phospholipids around, we can actually protect what's inside the brain and maintain the function and the length of how long these cells are actually kind of staying alive for as well, so they can be utilized throughout the brain. So that's a huge thing when we think about fats.
Fats is a funny one, isn't it? Because, you know, we get a lot of people that come in that, you know, still lived in the 80s and think that fat is the enemy.
Yeah.
That's going to make you fat, which logic would say that, right? But you know that it's actually vital to our cognitive behavior. But actually, if you eat good fats, then actually you reduce weight because you're not eating the carbs and the sugar that is causing the weight. So
Absolutely.
it's really important that we get good fats. Now let's talk about good fats. So you've brushed upon one there, which is fish oil, avocados.
Yeah, again, avocados, really high in monounsaturated fats, same as olive oil. So they work slightly differently, but again, they still kind of, your body absolutely needs them, and we need a variety of different fats. So I think we kind of, whenever we hear about certain fats being really good for you, we suddenly focus in on, okay, I should be having that fat all the time. But no, it's about everything in kind of variation and having that variety. So if you focus on, so the reason why we have so many inflammatory conditions in this worldwide or westernized population is because we have a skewed omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. So the reason
Fish and
why
chips, right? It's an omega-6 heaven.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So can't go away from that. But like omega-6 is just so prevalent in all our food. We are probably eating it, not even knowing that we're eating it. And because omega-3 is far harder to actually source and eat, we don't actually see as big a ratio that we actually should be having. So you can only really get omega-3 from kind of fish oils or from nuts and seeds and maybe some other kind of nutrients as well, but they're kind of the highest ones. But we have to physically go out and consciously eat those things, whereas omega-6 is found in everything. Processed food, it's a cheap source of oil as well, so it'll probably be found in so many other kind of products off the shelves. So it's just being aware of those sort of things as well, and just keeping up good ratios of fats.
So when we're talking about ratios, so typically, how much fish should you eat, oily fish, should you eat a week?
Well, they always say like government guidelines are around 2 to 3 a week, or 1 oily fish a week and then 2 other portions of fish. But I eat fish regularly. I mean, mackerel probably my favorite food. I absolutely love it on a slice of sourdough bread and kind of a bit of horseradish. Can't go wrong with that. And it's just trying to.
Brown mustard I discovered the other day.
Okay, nice. I'll try that one next time. But it's just, again, I wouldn't worry too much about kind of focusing in on, okay, I need to eat this amount a week. Eat what you enjoy, find things that you like, and then start mixing them up throughout the week and try and keep it around at least 2 pieces of fish a week. Just for that kind of omega-3 balance or the EPA and DHA balance. But again, find out what you enjoy, find out what you want. I know some people don't like fish, and that's when I would recommend having an omega-3 oil just to supplement that. And I think that is a good kind of way of doing that, because you do need to be having those sources of fats just for kind of the variety in your body, just to function from the brain as well. So DHA, for instance, is huge during pregnancy or kind of developing of the fetus. So it's quite key to understand that we need to kind of allow all these fats. We can't limit fats. I know there's a lot of kind of dietary approaches that limit fats and fatty foods, and they kind of shield away from these higher and rich in fat foods because it's too many points or they're too many calories, for instance. We need to go away slightly from that and just think, what is this food going to do to me? How much benefit is this going to add, and to kind of understand that it is really good for me. Now, I think there's
and likewise, what is this food not going to do for me, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's that same size on both things. So if you're picking up some food that's got kind of about 20 ingredients on it, you just got to think, what is that? What is that going to do to my body? How can I kind of replicate that? So it's like sauces as well, buying kind of ready-made sauces, for instance. How many times could you do that yourself and just add in maybe 4 ingredients, 5 ingredients, whereas these kind of on the shelf kind of ready-made
ingredients of them, yeah.
Yeah, so I think read labels. That's another thing. Just be aware of actually what you are eating. That's another thing, to be a little bit more mindful around that, and that would help with mental well-being as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we've talked about fats.
Yeah.
What else in terms of nutrients?
So choline. Choline's a great nutrient when we think about how much kind of benefit that feeds our body. So choline is basically a B vitamin, and we'll find, so eggs are one of the highest sources of choline. So you get about 250 milligrams of choline in an egg. So, and you can have quite a lot of kind of choline on a day-to-day basis, but in terms of what it does is it can help form kind of different varieties. So I've already talked about phospholipids, and they also help contribute towards these phosphatidylcholine, and that's another metabolite. So again, that's working on that. It's helping to protect the brain and the cells. But then you've also got acetylcholine as well, which is basically something that helps stimulate muscular movement, helps to stimulate your ability to kind of respond to information and move that body, or do work within the peripheral nervous system, which is basically controlling your subconscious movements and going to the toilet, for instance. So that's the things that we're looking at choline. So higher levels of choline in our diet is a great way of improving our ability for our brain to be stimulated and our brain to be able to use things on a day-to-day situation. So just to regulate our daily bodily movement is key to in terms of that. And there's research on it now in terms of neurodegenerative conditions as well, and increasing the availability of choline is key to in terms of utilizing choline. So we're kind of maintaining our brain health and maintaining our neurons within there as well. So that's another one. And but even
we've got a lot of our customers are vegans, and a lot of my family are vegan as well. So is there a source of choline for vegans?
Yeah, you can get them through beans and legumes, grains as well, but you won't find them quite as high amount in kind of meat or dairy or eggs, for instance. So it's knowing what sources to find. So sometimes you may need to supplement choline just to increase the levels. So it is hard in terms of getting all those right nutrients as a vegan or vegetarian, just because you have to, the quantity that you have to eat to get the amount that you actually need may be slightly out the window. So you may not actually be able to eat enough to get in what you want. So this is why the best sources are generally the meat, dairy, and eggs. So, but there's definitely ways that you can go about it and increasing the variety, but it's just maintaining throughout the day and kind of not limiting what you eat and just trying to get as much nutrients into your diet as possible to get all the abundance of these powerful nutrients into your body to be utilized.
Yeah, so really important if you are vegan as well. I mean, is to eat as many fruit and vegetables as possible. It's not, eating the fake meats and such.
No, try and stay away from them if you're going to be doing that. Again, that's considered a processed food. It's ultra processed. So try and eat a healthful vegan diet is, you can do it, and you can get all your nutrients from your food, bar say B12 or kind of high levels of choline, and even kind of through iron as well. Iron is a key thing when we're looking at vegans and vegetarians, and there's so many foods that inhibit the absorption of iron, that so kind of even eating high levels of legumes or phytate rich foods basically that inhibits our iron absorption. So we need to, and iron plays a key role in terms of our brain health and maintaining mental function. So that's a key thing as well in terms of regulating that blood flow, regulating the oxygenated blood as well. So that's the key thing when we're looking at iron. It helps regulate those blood cells and red blood cells as well. So that's another thing to be aware of. But even having ascorbic acid alongside iron rich food, which is so like your leafy greens, so having kind of citrus on top of those are really good for absorbing iron. So there's a lot of nuances when it comes to a vegan diet, but it's just knowing how to kind of eat the right foods at the right time and with the right combinations as well.
Okay, cool. I've got 3 more written down here, and I think the next one we want to go is through polyphenols and fermented foods, and I think there's a link between the two here. So do you just want to talk through those?
Yeah, so polyphenols are basically a group of combinations of phenolic compounds and flavonoids. They are basically so if you think about what they are, so anthocyanins, if you've ever heard of them, they are basically the pigment that makes a berry its color. So that deep, rich kind of purple color in a blueberry, for instance, that's anthocyanins being produced and creating this brilliant kind of color, and that offers so much kind of protective elements to us and antioxidants for us as well. So they're key in terms of where we're getting them from and what we actually need to actually provide our body with the kind of the antioxidants we need. So if we think about our bodies constantly working, our bodies constantly causing oxidative kind of markers within our body. So we always need a higher level of antioxidants to combat that as well. So if we've got low antioxidants, we're still going to be getting that oxidative reactions and causing oxygenation. So we need something that's going to help kind of inhibit that slightly and control the levels and the ratios of both. So by eating polyphenols, we are eating a wide variety of foods that are going to help control that balance of or that redox balance of the kind of antioxidants and oxidants going on in the body. But you'll find them in all varieties of food. So there's, when you break down the flavonoids, there's kind of groups of different flavonoids that are found in different foods. So you've got the anthocyanins, which is a flavonoid. We've got the flavonols, which is an anthocyanins. But kind of eating really rich foods in kind of beans, legumes, artichokes are really good in kind of Jerusalem artichokes are really high in polyphenols as well. So it's just trying to find that variety of kind of, I've already talked about that, eating the rainbow, eating colorful foods. That's the best way of increasing those polyphenols. And there's actually also evidence now to show kind of how good they are for your gut bacteria as well. And we're seeing how they kind of create these metabolites within the bodies to kind of produce kind of further kind of actions to the body, improving our energy function, improving our mental well-being as well, and improving that neurotransmitter functions also.
Which we talked about earlier, right, is where the gut is directly linked to the brain. So if you improve those polyphenols and flavonoids in the gut, then that's going to improve the emotions effectively that are going to be flowing through the brain. There really is a massive link.
Oh yeah, so the vagus nerve is the link between the brain to our stomach, and that is a direct link. So everything passes through that will go up to there. So I think 80% of the kind of the nutrients we produce in our gut go to the brain as well. So that's huge when we think about how much that plays a role. And then that can take you into fermented foods as well, and how fermented foods can really play a role in terms of improving that diversity within the gut, improving the kind of the short chain fatty acids within the gut as well. So they're kind of metabolites of bacteria being fermented basically within the gut, and they create the kind of elements within the cells and within our brain as to how they actually work. So butyrate is a short chain fatty acid, and that's actually found in GABA as well. So that's key metabolite for that, and it helps produce that.
GABA, just to remind everyone, GABA is a hormone?
Yeah, GABA is a kind of inhibitory neurotransmitter, so it helps calm you down. So if you're feeling high in anxiety, highly stressed, then stimulating GABA is a way to control that. And you can do that by producing your gut flora, or improving your gut flora, improving the kind of metabolites within there as well. And even you can actually find GABA in fermented foods as well, such as miso, or in your sauerkraut and kimchi as well. So you actually find levels of GABA naturally within those as well. So they're fermented foods are brilliant when we're thinking about how they offer so much variety for our body, and they give us so much benefit as well. So
I just think this is so key to looking after our brains to help our mental health, is if we look after our gut health through fermented foods.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
nobody's talking about it, right? We are, because we're in the industry and we know that, but it's not out there in the public knowledge to have this conversation, and the link is clear. It really is.
Massively. Like the biggest talking point seems to be vitamin D at the moment. And yeah, absolutely, vitamin D plays a big role in terms of our immunity and longevity, and kind of so many other, like even our bone health, for instance. Like there's so many things that vitamin D is involved in. But how do we help vitamin D be utilized within the body? We've got to improve our metabolic health, and that is via our gut, and improving our ability to utilize all the nutrients that we're actually eating as well. So whether that's through going back to right at the beginning, where we're cooking our own food, releasing these gastric enzymes to help us break all these food down, it's all part and parcel of improving our ability to feel good, improving our efficiency of the body as well. And that's the key. We can treat it like a machine sometimes. If we feed it what it needs and allow the body to do more, then that's going to give us the chance to kind of utilize everything throughout the body and make us feel good, really.
And you're eating all these fantastic colourful foods and these fermented foods, it's naturally going to help with fibre, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So fibre is probably overlooked. Even water is also overlooked. So fiber and water go hand in hand when we think about what they're doing. So fiber is basically a way of cleaning the body out. It helps to take everything out that you don't actually need. So it helps remove cholesterol within the body. So if we've got kind of excess cholesterol over in the body, if we've got high cholesterol, fiber is a great way of clearing out that and helping improve the ability to kind of get rid of weight. Well, obviously get rid of waste.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get kind of bogged down with cholesterol, but cholesterol is actually used in the brain as well. So we need cholesterol in there as well. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's just when we have excess and we don't have enough to be able to regulate it in our body, and our fiber, we've got low fiber, we've got low water, we may be eating too much more fiber and then not enough water. So it's kind of need to make sure we're drinking plenty of water to utilize the fiber. So it's all insoluble fiber that we want to be kind of allowing to kind of, or soluble fiber as well, just to help to pass through the body and clear out everything within there. And that's all down to, as well, fermented foods. But fiber works as, so if you think about fermented foods and good bacteria needs a fuel. Now, fiber is that fuel. And by having more fiber, we're creating this kind of energy source for the good bacteria to work on and utilize throughout the body as well. So we need that fiber to help utilize all those fermented foods as well. So everything works in a cycle, and it's not just one thing that's going to help. It's kind of finding that balance and just making sure that we're eating in a mindful, colorful, and kind of efficient way. Really, it's just knowing what you eat, what you're putting in is going to give you some benefit. So
and by doing that, we clear out all of the stuff that's causing that clag that we talked about right at the beginning in our brains, to let us think well and then deal with situation that is upon a lot of us at the moment. So I'm not saying it's going to cure it, I'm not saying that at all, but we're saying it's really going to help.
Oh, absolutely. And this is all it is. It's advice as to how we can better our body's ability to combat stress. And that's how we can deal with it. And that's the only way, well, in terms of what I've seen, there's so much evidence around it. And we're seeing even more and more research in terms of that kind of the beneficial action of our gut and our brain and everything in between as well. So it's just kind of finding that what works for you and what foods you want to eat that are going to improve that kind of ability to kind of feel better about yourself, really, and during times like these.
Fantastic. Okay, so we've talked about food. We haven't really talked about exercise, but we have talked about sleep. But I just want to, we can, I mean, exercise is exercise. You need to exercise around improving your mental health, but I don't want to preempt too much of your top tips. So when we close, we always close one of these inspired events with the top tips that you've got for people that they can take away from this and just say, right, in summary, this is what you need to do, and this is going to really help your brain health to then help your mental health.
So number one is go outside. That's as easy as it gets. Like, once you're outside, you're going to move, you're going to be active, you're going to be doing things like that. Feel good of just the air in your face and the oxygen as well. So if you think about in your house, you're limited in oxygen unless you've got lots and lots of plants. As soon as you get outside, you get that fresh air, you get that feel good factor straight away, and that's one of the best things you can do. So my number one is go outdoors, just be outside, really. I know we're probably restricted right now in terms of how much we can, so within government rules, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Is that it? Just one tip?
No. So the next one was kind of in between. So it was kind of like stay active, like whether that's finding things to do around the house and kind of being active keeps your mind on top. So if you're just sat around waiting for something to happen, your brain's just going to dwell on things. You're going to start feeling a bit down, a bit bored, for instance. It's trying to get out of that cycle and not allowing yourself to get bored. Think of something to do. Think of just, and when I say be active, this could be going to be physically active, or it could be kind of doing stuff to keep your mind active as well. So it's just finding that stimulation to keep yourself active and improve your day-to-day feelings on what you're doing.
And not social media.
Not social media, not scrolling through Instagram or Facebook and just look at what everyone else is doing. Do what you, so that brings me on to the next point, which is focus on yourself.
Seamless.
Yeah. Like, almost like we practice this. But no, yeah, focus on yourself. And that's number one. Don't worry about what other people are doing. Like, they're not going to do anything for you in that moment. Focus on what you're doing, how you're helping yourself, and if you want to talk to other people, find out ways that they're doing things, and that's totally fine. But talk to people about it. Don't go through, this so and so is doing this on Facebook and so is doing that. It's a hard line to go down. Just really focus on yourself. But then in terms of that, that's kind of the physical and mental side of things. But I've got two more kind of tips, and I think this is more food related, but it's be adventurous with food. Don't kind of limit yourself to anything. Try lots of different things. Try cooking lots of different things, and try kind of finding new recipes, for instance, and just trying to, even if it's trying to replicate your favorite takeaway, for instance. You just try, like, we've got more time.
Replicate the recipes on the Elixir Health channel. So go on our YouTube, have a look at our recipes, and go and get cooking.
Excellent.
Apart from the cake.
Yeah. It all helps. But yeah, and then finally, eat the rainbow. And that kind of goes into what I was talking about in terms of being adventurous with food. Like, there's shown that by having more than 25 different types of food a week is the best way of improving your gut bacteria, and that variety just help that flourish, basically. So eat as colourful food as you can, whether it's purple, red, green, orange. Nothing's off limits when it comes to colours of food. So yeah, try and be adventurous and just eat those different veg. Try and kind of start doing veg boxes, for instance, and just see if you can get kind of new vegetables into your diet. I think there was a study that came out about the limited amount of food that we eat in the UK, and I think it was like 5 pieces of fruit and veg that we all eat and we're so limited with what we eat. I think it was like a carrot, an orange, or an apple, peas. I can't quite remember what the other two were, but we are so limited. But eat more, find new things. Go to your local grocers as well. Go to your local health food shop and find what they're offering, what they're giving, what different options that they have as well. So that's the key thing.
It's funny you say that as well. We're actually running a 50 food challenge that you can get through us with our nutritionist as well.
Nice.
And this links in absolutely perfectly with that. So Phil, thank you for today. Really appreciate it. It's been really good. I've really enjoyed this one. And you know, talking about brain health is something that's really topical for a lot of people right now. So I hope you guys have got something out of this, and you know, implement some of them. It doesn't have to be all of them. Just start implementing some of it and making a change for yourself. And you know, we're all just trying to get through this, right? Let's keep plodding on and make life a little bit easier for ourselves. So thanks for watching. If you like it, please like it on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, put your comments in below, and look forward to seeing you at the next one. Thank you all, and thank you, Phil.
Thank you very much.